Let's take you back to the streets of London where, as we've been reporting today, there are riots right across several areas, east and south of London centre. And an eyewitness report of someone who's been caught up in some of the rioting and the looting. Badham is a resident of the suburb of Lee Green in London, and she watched a supermarket being looted just a short time ago. Badham, thanks so much for joining us. Tell us a little bit about your last 24 hours. Where have you been and what have you seen?
Where I've been is I was in an accident and emergency ward in hospital last night. I've been living in London for 10 years. I've never seen anything like this, as you can imagine, and had been hearing about these riots in Tottenham. I had an injury, which I just acquired independently of the riots, and was trying to get some medical care, and went to Lewisham Hospital with a friend. And, you know, at 10:30 at night, the wards were just absolutely crowded with people. And it turned out that the riots had been responsible for the closure of King's Hospital in Brixton, which is one of the major A&E wards in London. Another hospital had been closed. The medical staff were just under so much pressure. I've never seen so many people in a hospital in my life. There were people like overflowing onto the street, and it's just nightmarish here at the moment. I mean, I was in the ward for several hours because, you know, it was just too few doctors and too many people trying to get help. I came back to my friend's house in Lee Green, and my friend has been driving around all day, and constant updates about, you know, streets that are crowded with police and crowded with people, young people on the streets wearing hoodies, wearing sunglasses. And it just seems that everywhere anybody I know goes in London gets trashed. I've been at home because I'm convalescing and have been hearing sirens all day. I was going to the shops to get myself some medication from the Sainsbury's, which is next door. It's completely smashed up. There's glass everywhere. And Sainsbury's is, you know, a local supermarket. Yes. It's like Coles or Woolworths, and it's now all boarded up. All the shops around here are smashed, and this is a relatively quiet part of London. Like Lee Green is not an area that is particularly renowned for, you know, explosive acts of violence.
Badham, I'm just going to jump in there, just to slow you down a little bit. Let's just take a few steps back. When you were
sorry, as you can imagine, it's pretty crazy.
Absolutely, I can tell the adrenaline is running as it would be. Let me just ask you, when you were in the hospital and you say it was absolutely crowded, so were these all people who had sustained injuries in the riots?
No, these were people who were just trying to get medical help from A&E wards. But the point was that the major hospital to deal with accident and emergency, which is King's, had been closed because it was surrounded by rioters. Like, the riots are unpredictable. They're everywhere. They're causing enormous amounts of civil disruption. And this is the current infrastructure of London is not coping very well with what's going on. There aren't enough police. Resources are being really stretched, and there are no buses. There are no trains. My friend has just told me, like, it's really bad. There's concern that there aren't enough fire personnel or enough emergency personnel to deal with these problems. And this is what is so frightening. Like, in that ward last night, we were trapped there for hours. The waiting got longer and longer, and people, you know, coming in for all kinds of, you know, accidents and emergencies, women with their faces, you know, smashed, and, you know, people bleeding. And it was like something from a horror movie. And it's because that's what the riots are doing. They're shutting the city down.
Yeah. Well, that seems to be the intent, although it's very hard to try and ascertain what the real intent of these rioters are. You've lived in London for a number of years. There's been a little bit of commentary in the British media about just what this really might be about, and one analyst in particular in The Guardian suggesting, look, there actually is some social dislocation that's at the bottom of all of this. Do you have a sense of what these rioters are really trying to do or trying to attempt, if indeed there's a rationale to it at all?
Look, there's no plan. It's opportunistic, but it's opportunistic based on factors that have been present for the past 12 months. I'd been back in Australia last October. My partner and I got off the plane and came back to our flat in London, and it felt like stepping into a country we'd never been in before. I mean, if anybody who's lived here knows that the pressure, particularly on the underclass and the working class in London, I mean, quite explicitly because of the cuts to government services and the reduction of the safety net, it's causing enormous amounts of social dislocation, and civil society has been fracturing. I mean, it was things like when we got back to London and seeing people like spit on the street and people driving too fast, and this kind of sudden disrespect for social forms of engagement. And you can feel it in this city. I mean, the gap between rich and poor in London is like nothing anywhere else in the world. As an Australian, it's really difficult to get your head around the disparity between the unbelievable wealth in places like West London and just the absolutely horrific urban poverty in places of South London. And you can see it, like all the elements of the welfare state that have kept this society together for several decades have been frayed by the government cuts. They're ideological cuts. I mean, everybody knows that. But it's things like, the threat of losing public housing, the removal of services, the closure of libraries, all of these things. They're resulting in enormous amounts of social conflict and social alienation and dislocation, and a real resentment. And it's a resentment you can feel here. And
well, that's right. And it seems to be coming out in just that sort of old style way that we saw in Brixton all those years ago. Look, Badham, really good to talk to you. Stay safe, and thanks so much for making some time for us.
Yeah, thanks.
Thank you.